Every day, I work with leaders who ask me how they can find great leadership. Great leadership in themselves and great leadership in those around them. And they're not asking how they become the next Mandela or the next King or the next Gandhi. They're asking how they, in their own lives, can find the moments of greatness that enable them, for example, to insist that those who work with them bring the best out of themselves, that enable them to transform intimate relationships, that enable them to make a dangerous career transition. This is what I hear them asking for. And they know that great leadership does not depend upon a few people. Great leadership does not come from the person sitting next to you. Great leadership comes from each one of us. They know that there is not enough leadership out there. And that's what they are calling for. So for the last 20 years, the biggest question that I have worked with is, how does great leadership happen? And I think I've realized something. What I have seen is that the essential qualities of leadership, compassion, courage, humility, fierceness, come about through turning towards our experience in contact with others and not turning away from it. Great. So effectively, you're telling me that great leadership is about turning towards our sorrow and our pain and our grief. I think I will turn to the person next to me and ask them to be the leaders. Well, too bad. It doesn't work like that. Here's how it works. Life throws challenges at us over and over and over. We are affected by the world over and over. We feel fear in response to danger. We feel grief in response to loss. We feel shame in response to the harm that we cause. We feel anger in response to injustice. And in those moments, we have a choice. If we turn towards our experience, each of those emotions can be transformed. So, our fear can be transformed into courage. Our grief can be transformed into compassion. Our shame can be transformed into humility. And our anger can be transformed into fierceness. But if we turn away, we are diminished. So, how? It's not just, okay, all right, I choose courage instead of fear. It doesn't work like that. How does it work? It works through contact and connection with others, through our openness to that experience in relation to other people. So how is it that fear transforms into courage? It transforms through connected moments of vulnerability. I'm thinking about a CEO who I worked with who had built an extraordinary company and knew after about 7 or 8 years that her position was more than she could handle, that in some way she could not cope with the position that she was in. And she turned to her team in a moment, in a carefully organized moment, and said, tell me about my leadership. What works about what do I do, and what doesn't work? And in that moment, she heard the truth. The team realized that the organization was going to have to change. They had to let go of the form that they were in and the identity that they were in, and let it go. In that moment of courage, she wasn't courageous just for that moment. She was courageous forever. She had built courage inside herself, and it was staying with her. How do you transform grief into compassion? I'm thinking of the day when I heard that one of my best friends had taken his own life, and I was with a group of friends, and little by little, they encouraged me, allowed me to open to the grief that I was in. Little by little, they held parts of me physically. And each time I turned towards my own self-blame for what I should have done to have changed it, which was a turning away from my grief, each time I did that, they allowed me, encouraged me to turn towards the grief. And I know that after that, I experienced loss in a different way. I just understood loss in a different way. I'm thinking about how is it that we transform our shame into humility. These turning towards happen not just at a personal level, but also at a national level. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa is an extraordinary example of a whole ritual of accountability that a country went through, in which the horrors of apartheid were laid bare, in which those who had perpetrated crimes owned to what they had done, and in which those who had been perpetrated were able to restore their dignity. The whole country was different after that. The understanding of how we connect, how we share our shame in relation to others, there's a different understanding in that country now. How do we transform our anger into fierceness? Well, strangely, a great example is good marriage therapy. In good marriage therapy, we have an opportunity to be fierce, to express the anger that we feel if we stay connected to our anger and if we stay connected to the other. In those moments, our fierceness grows. That relationship has built its capacity. And in moments of healthy conflict, we respect the dignity of others and we do not turn towards violence. So, all of this seems so risky, yes? It seems so risky to bare ourselves so completely. But think about the alternative. The other risk is that we don't turn towards it. If we don't turn towards our fear, we lose our confidence. If we don't turn towards our grief, we become depressed. If we don't turn towards our shame for the harm that we've caused, we feel alienated. If we don't turn towards our anger, we become resentful. So we all know that great leadership is not inevitable. It is not inevitable that we speak truth to power. It is not inevitable that we have creative breakthroughs. It is not inevitable that a marriage is saved from an affair. We know that we each individually have to turn towards it. So, if leadership is about turning towards those qualities inside us and turning towards our experiences, if leadership is about finding those essential qualities, yes, it is often uncomfortable, sometimes terrifying, often heartbreaking, but we know it is what gives us life, and we know that is the only thing that has ever made a creative, constructive difference in the world. Thank you.